So here's our final one here on the right, just kind of tweaked a little bit of the bends and curves there. So now I can take the one that we just created. I'd like to keep it around. You never know when I might need to use it for another iteration of a logo, so I always like to keep that around. So here's our little espresso shot glass right there. And now we have a couple more to do. We have a espresso machine and a coffee cup. Let's try the coffee cup next. We're going to do that right here. We're just going to be really simple. We're just going to create a circle. We're going to get that curvature tool and we're going to just bring it all the way down. So you almost have like an instant coffee cup shape. Of course, this does need a little bit of tweaking. You could double click to turn it into a corner. So I'm just going to double click these two edges, turn it into a corner, and mess with it that way. Maybe make it a little less thick. Make it more of a bowl kind of shape. We need to have a little handle. So what we can do is we can do a circle as our handle and put a stroke on it. Make the stroke fairly thick. And then we can also change the angle of the, make it a little bit less of a perfect circle, a little bit more of a classic handle that you would see on a coffee cup. If you want to make that thick and make it down here a little bit thinner, give it a more natural curve, you could do that as well. So what I thought after kind of working on this, what would be a really a better icon is kind of your classic mug style instead of the cup. So this is still great. I can just save that for later. And we're going to learn how to create this shape right here. So I'm just going to take the square. I'm just going to do a square. And I'm going to take the curvature tool. I'm just going to go down and make my curves. I'm going to take the direct selection tool and soften everything a little bit. And then I'm going to do the handle just like I did before, and we can even borrow the handle we just did. So we don't have to redo that. And if we can always add a point. So we're adding kind of a curve point to bring that down a little bit. And maybe reducing the thickness. And I love using the width tool to create kind of smoke effects. So I'm just going to do this very small curve, just like a little curve with the pen tool. And then you can always take the width tool. I'm going to zoom in here. I'm just going to make it wide on one side and skinny on the other. And you have a nice, natural, smooth shape. Of course, you can always shrink it down like we have it. And you have kind of your little coffee cup symbol. So that's kind of how I created that particular one. So I'm going to go ahead and get this in here. Kind of worked on that one a little bit longer. And so now we have 3 of our icons, and we'll balance all these icons once we get the last one. The last one's going to be the toughest. It's going to be an espresso machine. So we're definitely going to need to find a reference photo. Unfortunately, I already have a reference photo right here, and I've already kind of drawn a little bit of the basics for that. So we're going to trace this just like we did with the espresso shot. We're going to think about simplifying it as much as we can. So we're not going to trace all the little details, just kind of the big blocks of details, because we really want to make this a very concise, very small detailed, or not small detail, but less details as possible icon. So this is kind of the roughed out blocked shape we're going to go for, and we're going to punch out details using the shape builder tool, some white punched out areas to flesh it out, and then we're going to add our little shot glass. So this is kind of the shape we're looking to build here with this reference photo. And so I'm just going to go ahead and trace using a stroke with the pen tool, just some basic shapes. Doesn't have to be exact. You could take some guesses here with how you want to have it. Just getting the basic shape. So we have some shapes here, very basic. We can duplicate that shape, and don't worry if shapes cross over, because you're going to blend all this into one big shape. So it doesn't matter if they cross over. Let's reverse that. I'm just going to reflect. So now we have that same side done already. Okay, now we're going to do the bottom. Okay, so you can kind of see a rough outline. I'm going to reduce the transparency so you can kind of start to see a little bit more of what we sketched here. So any other details you think are important, to make this be seen as a espresso machine, go ahead and draw those. So for right now, we're going to need this portion. It's going to get the curvature tool to make that bend right there. We go ahead and zoom in. We don't want too many details, so let's simplify it. It's our espresso machine now. It doesn't have to be an exact copy of the photo. You can make it whatever espresso machine you want to make it. So now we kind of have these two kind of things that come out here. That's where the espresso comes out. We're just going to make it one, because this is a double espresso machine, which would just make the icon too complex. So let's just do our little shape here that comes out. Just going to do a stroke and make it thick. And then maybe put like a round cap on it. Just kind of showing our little espresso spout, I guess it's called. Going to reflect, just reflecting. Just went to transform, reflect, and the object panel. So this is kind of a very archaic, rough sketch. I kind of see maybe I want to fill that in a little bit, so just drawing a shape there. There we go. So this is our rough outline. We can always add our little espresso cup later on because we already have one of those made. So we don't need the reference photo anymore, so I'm just going to go ahead and remove that so you can kind of see our basic outlines. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and remove these two because I already have that as a stroke. But I'm going to flip all these to fill, and there's our basic espresso machine shape. And what's great about this is I can maybe put a stroke on this nice shape here. Put a little stroke, make it nice and thick. Bring that to the front. Put some round caps on it. And I can use the shape builder tool. I'm going to go ahead and highlight all of this. And I'm going to need to outline my stroke on that. So I'm going to go path, outlining the stroke, because you have to outline your path strokes to be able to punch things out using the shape builder tool. I'm going to hold down Option. I'm going to punch all of the white portions out. And you notice it's kind of creating that negative space with the icon. Sometimes you have to click and drag all these little intersecting points we made because we kind of drew it really quick and messy. And there we go. So now we're kind of cutting out some details into the machine. And we could do the same thing down here to kind of create a little bit of a negative space line that goes across. And then we can add our little espresso cup. So we could spend a little bit more time kind of perfecting little imperfections like down here that kind of have a strange curve. So just kind of removing things and just kind of fine-tuning it. We could spend probably even more time messing around with this, but for the sake of time, I think we're ready. I punched out another little line down there in the bottom. So of course this is all transparent, as you can see. So let's kind of join all this as one icon. We could take the shape builder tool, and instead of holding down Option to subtract, we can add everything together as one kind of icon. We might have to do this in stages. So we're adding that together, and then we're kind of adding this together. Okay, and we're adding these together just in stages. Great. So now we have that. We're going to group this together, and I wonder if it's going to give us the opportunity to kind of round the edges. It is. Okay, so this will help kind of round everything like everything else we've been doing, kind of rounding some of the edges. Might also have to do this in stages, so just selecting this middle kind of area. So this adds a little bit more polish to any kind of logo or logo design, unless you want to have those sharp edges. I grouped together our espresso machine, and we have it right here. If you still have any paths, just make sure you go up to Path and you outline your stroke. So just going to go to Object, Path, Outline Stroke, and now I can kind of reduce it in size, and I have my kind of final icon. So one thing I want to do is I want to add our little espresso shot in there. So I'm going to copy and paste that. That's already ready to go. So I'm going to make that a little bit smaller, kind of put it right there in the middle there. We can also change the colors on this, bring that up a little bit. So we could decide this is the one I did kind of before I filmed the class, is kind of creating the ideas, and this is the one after. We can use whichever one we think, you know, kind of communicates the espresso machine. And since our reference photo had two spouts, we just wanted to do one, so that was kind of a mistake on my part. So let's go ahead and use the one I did prior, I did the one spout. So I kind of created my own little spout there. And drag that in. And there are our 4 little icons ready to go. Now we're going to need to balance out the symbols. So let's go ahead and slide that over because I might want to use that coffee cup later for another idea. So here we go. So now we need to have some balance. So when we're talking about balance in design, I like to kind of zoom out just a little bit. And we got to make sure there's not one element that overpowers another or one element that's too big. They all kind of need to be equal. So what we could do is we can kind of do circles, kind of get an idea of size. So maybe an icon is not taller than the circle, and they can all kind of be even throughout. Just kind of making sure they all kind of match in there. We could do that method, which is kind of a traditional method. We can pop it on the grid, but we're not going to do the grid quite yet, because I've been saying that a lot. So let's eyeball it here. Sometimes eyeballing is a little bit better because you may have an element that extends outside the circle that would make this smaller than it needs to be. So a lot of times I'll just optically adjust, which is just me kind of seeing how it goes and kind of going, okay, well that's detailed, so let's make that a tiny bit smaller compared to the other ones. And we also want to make sure there's a little bit of a distance, similar distance between all of these spaces here. So maybe tuck that a little bit closer. Push these a little bit further away. I want to have some equal spacing in all 4 of these corners. So now we're ready to work our typography and do our type on path tool. We already have that created on our other one, so we're just going to borrow it. And we have the one that's not outlined. So this is why I keep these things, so I don't have to do the same task over and over. I already have it kind of ready to go. And let me kind of see what typeface might work really well with this one. I think lots of wide spacing is kind of what my original concept had. So let me see what we come up with here.